let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say at Red Hat.
We haven't
This is so
we
awesome.
are an open culture that believes
actually
in
a big
importance of
piece
What is that process that a developer, or let's say
As the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed.
Hello and welcome to this week's Ask an OpenShift Administrator Office Hours. I am co-host Andrew Sullivan, joined as always by Mr. Jonny Rickard. How are you today, sir?
Dude, I'm here, man. It's Wednesday, it is busy, and I'm ready to go. How about you?
The same. It is a busy time of year. We are on, for Red Hatters, we are on week 3 of Red Hat 1. So that is now 3 weeks in a row where certain regions of the world have been quiet and certain regions have been very, very involved and excited and all that other stuff. So for anybody who doesn't know, Red Hat 1 is our internal sales kickoff tech exchange training type of thing. So, a lot of our folks, a lot of our people out in the fields, they come back and they're super excited, and there's, they've learned a bunch of stuff. They've heard a bunch of stuff from us on the product side and all of that. And, even though I can't be there, it gets me excited. And, I wish I could be there. I would love to go to get back into traveling a little bit, but not.
Yeah, for sure.
Not yet.
Yeah, I think the one thing I love about like the Red Hat 1 Tech Exchange thing is like it's a celebration, right? Like you're there, you get to celebrate all the stuff that you did that year, you're learning new things, but it's like that social part of it too, right? Where you get to go and you get to hang out with the Red Hatters that you've been talking to online for the last year or however long, and you get to hang out with them. So that's probably my favorite part about it. And then just going to the labs and learning all the new stuff. Like I remember when OpenShift Virtualization first came out, and like I went and I think it was Reese giving the demo and stuff like that, and I was like, oh man, this is gonna be crazy.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I remember it's being a part of that first OpenShift Virtualization lab. Ouch. I just banged my hand on the desk. So yeah, and things have come a long way. We'll be talking a little bit about OpenShift Virtualization today. It's certainly been a hot topic here as of recently for various reasons that we won't go into. And I think related, but not just specifically to OpenShift Virtualization, is a lot of stuff to do with networking. I was telling you just a couple of minutes ago when we were starting of like, I've been doing like a crash course in a couple of the new features in 4.14 and OVN and stuff like that. And it's been a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to sharing some things here on the stream. And I know you've been digging into deployments and deployment configs. One of the big things that is happening here in the not too distant future is deployment configs are going away.
Yep.
And, that has some implications and stuff like that. So yeah, today was a little, I wouldn't say it's a jumble. Rather, it's just some things that you and I have both been poking at and I hesitate to say messing around with, but like it's stuff that we've been interacting with, and therefore it's cool stuff to show the world.
Yeah, I agree. I think the network stuff is, we've had internal conversations with other people about, how the right way of doing this, the best way of doing it, like the automated, Ansible versus like GitOps way of doing things and stuff like that. So I think that this is probably a good primer for probably some of these next, upcoming conversations or streams that we're going to have on it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
There's I know we were brainstorming the other day. There's a ton of stuff that we want to get to. We've got I guess we can go ahead and touch on some of the things we've got coming up, including I think we finally landed on the number 3. We're going to have 3 AI centric topics leading into KubeCon, and KubeCon is in April, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So most of March will be OpenShift AI and AI centric here on Ask an OpenShift Admin. I don't know. I hear AI is a thing these days, apparently.
A popular buzzword, buzz acronym.
We do love buzzwords here. That is what. Remember, I am both a manager and a marketing person, right? I have both of those things in my title. Therefore, I'm all about buzzwords. So
that's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
How I get paid by the buzzword. Anyways, So for anybody who is joining us live, thank you. We appreciate you taking time out of your day. So this is an office hours live stream here on Red Hat Live Streaming, which means that we are here to talk about whatever happens to be on your mind. Any questions, anything that you're wanting to learn about, anything that you want to ask us about, that's what we're here for. And Jonny and I, we're pretty involved in OpenShift in a bunch of different areas, but as I am keen to say, OpenShift is like a fractal. Right. For every question that you get answered, it opens up an unlimited set of new questions that all have that same pattern repeating. So
Yeah.
you don't know everything. That being said, we are happy to reach back into all of the various parts of OpenShift in order to help get answers. So I'm part of the business unit, which means that I regularly interact with our product management teams and other tech marketing folks like myself, and Jonny's part of the engineering side. So we have influence? No, influence isn't the right word. We know who to ask.
We have reach.
Yeah, reach. There you go. Anyways, so please don't hesitate to ask questions here in the chat. Whatever platform you're watching us on, it gets rebroadcast across all of them. If you are not watching us live, or if you happen to be listening to us, also feel free to reach out to us. You can reach me at Sully, SULLY, or Jonny, JONNY, at redhat.com. We love to get your messages. We love to get your emails. We're also on various other platforms. I'd say X, but I honestly have just stopped being on it.
Yeah.
LinkedIn, we're both on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out there. Reddit, so the OpenShift subreddit is a great way to reach Jonny and I. You can find me at Practical Andrew, rather, and Jonny at JRockTX. You can find us at the same usernames on the Kubernetes Slack as well. So you can go to slack.kubernetes.com, or sorry, kubernetes.slack.com. Yeah, had to think about that one. There we go. And there is an OpenShift user Slack channel there. So if you want to connect with other OpenShift folks, it's like 3,000, 4,000 of our closest friends out there. All right. So as is tradition, let's talk about some top of mind things, Jonny. And
Yeah. Let's.
Minutes, and then we'll get into the topics.
Right on. So yeah, the first one is we've got the what's new for OpenShift 4.15. That is going to be it's going to be February 15th at 10:30 Eastern time. So yeah, it's going to be 10:30 to noon.
Present.
Yeah, exactly. So you're in your love hangover. You get to wake up and watch the what's new for OpenShift 4.15 to keep it going. To keep that magic alive.
Hard to believe we're already at the cusp of 4.15.
I know, and on top of that, like it's already February. It's already the middle of February. Which is insane.
Please don't remind me. My youngest just had her birthday, so it's been a whirlwind of holidays and birthdays and all kinds of other stuff, and more stuff.
Yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say all of our kids' birthdays are in like fall, so it's like October, November, Christmas. So I've got both kids and then Jesus. All back to back.
Well, I have Christmas, and then a week later is my middle's birthday, and then a month later is my youngest's birthday, and then a few months go by, and then it's various other people. But yeah, within 35 days, we have three major events. So.
Yeah.
Thank you for posting the link to that. It should be staged, I think, on the OpenShift YouTube channel.
It is.
So
I saw this morning.
Yeah. So if you're watching us on the Red Hat YouTube channel, or then just check over on the OpenShift YouTube channel or on Twitch, because we don't usually broadcast those over to the Red Hat channel, just the OpenShift centric channels. Let's see what else was on our notes here. So what's new in OpenShift 4.15 is next Thursday. We talked about OpenShift Local last week or the week before, right?
I don't remember. I know that they just released the GA announcement just came out this week, so that's why I put it in there.
Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, it's just OpenShift Local is it's been released and it's using 4.14.8, the OpenShift version 4.14.8, and also the Microshift version. So if you want to download it, I'm posting the link right now. So yeah, you go there, you can download it, update your OpenShift Local cluster if you already have one. But yeah, it's the release notes didn't seem like there's anything super crazy. It's 4.14.8. So they fixed some things with the Windows container and a couple things with with Podman, but by and large, it looks like it's more of a bug fix, maintenance release type of thing.
Got it. Let's see. The other thing I had on here. I actually encountered this morning, and I thought it would be important to share because I was upgrading a cluster to 4.14. So let's see here. Let me share a window. Wait, you, and let's go here. So inside, I guess I should actually share my window, huh? Share screen, share window, share this one. Yeah, we'll go with that one. That's the right one.
Yep.
And then let me adjust a little bit. And then we'll also adjust our layout here to make it, oops, not that one. This one, to make it maybe a little bit easier to see. All right, so this is an OpenShift 4.14 cluster. And you'll notice that I'm running in an incognito window here. And the reason for that is because there is an issue, there is a bug in dynamic plugins. So you can see I have dynamic plugins here. They're all enabled and running except for the ODF console here. And they're all functioning. So the problem is there is a browser caching issue with plugins in OpenShift 4.14. So if we look over here at this KCS article, it talks about exactly what happens. Basically, you'll see that the plugins go into a status of failed, and it comes back with this unexpected N of JSON output error. So the solution for that is more or less, and of course, I'm not logged in here. But anyways, the solution for that short term before the fix gets pushed is to use an incognito window. So if you don't want to use an incognito window for whatever reason, another alternative would be to go in and go to the developer tools on your browser. And then at least here in Chrome, if I go to preferences, and then I can disable cache. So that will have the same effect. It will effectively disable the cache and prevent that error from coming up. And then you can, load the plugins like normal. That being said, one or the other should be sufficient. I'm just using an incognito window today instead of my normal. I have a browser profile for the stream. So that way my normal browser plugins and history and bookmarks and all that don't pop up and, get in the way. But yeah, so if you happen to be seeing this, incognito window is the fastest way or the easiest way. Correct, Corey. I'm sorry to hear that you spent that much time on it. I know that's frustrating. So I found it in a very roundabout way. I didn't know I couldn't find the magic keywords to plug into the KCS search. I don't know why. I will say that Andrew's personal opinion is that the search, when they redid this KCS interface, the search got a lot more difficult to use. So like here, if we plug in this unexpected end of JSON and go and do a search here. So it used to be, right, you could check the boxes and it would continuously filter it down. And now it's like, so if I could type correctly. So OpenShift container platform, and then I can come down here and select like solutions. And, of course now it pops up as the first one here. But like every time I want to plug in something different, it resets all of my filters and all kinds of other stuff. And I'm compared to the other one, I'm not, I don't like this one as much. I can usually, fat finger my way through it, but everybody has a different preference. Yeah. So that was the major one. Yeah. Updated yesterday. It's so a little secret. You can go in and, can you? Maybe that's only maybe I only see it because with my Red Hat account, you used to be able to go in and see the history of when it was updated. Maybe you can't do that anymore. Here's one from December 14th that looks like it might be the same. Yeah. So anyways, sorry that was difficult, but hopefully that did not affect anything too much. And let's see, was there other?
No.
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 Okay. Sorry, I'm just.
Oh, you're good.
Messing with chat here.
Yeah, I'm putting myself in corrupt Corey's, seat, and just imagining, like, I know how frustrating that is. Like when you're working on something, you're like, what the hell is happening right now? What? This worked fine yesterday. What is going on?
Yeah. So for my the way that I found it was to actually go to issues.redhat.com, which is our, Jira instance. And you can plug it into the search here and it comes up, and I don't remember how I found one of these in through here, and it led me on a little trail to get there. But for those who don't know, so issues.redhat.com is where we track a lot of things, and most of these things are public. So a lot of times, like we did the roadmap session last October, right? So a lot of times you can come in here and you can search for those and find the exact Jira issue that it's related to, and you can follow it and learn more information and get updates when things change and stuff like that.
And one thing I found out about this, and it could have been user error. It most likely could have been user error. I was working with another person from like the OpenShift Commons group, and we were trying to submit like an RFE. And if you're trying to do an RFE through Jira, I think you need to probably use like your account exec or go through like maybe on the GitHub side. I wasn't really sure. It wasn't clear. It wouldn't allow him as a user to submit an RFE. So just if you have ideas.
I think it depends on which project you're using.
Okay.
Let's see. There is the RFE project. So like OpenShift request for enhancement.
Oh.
So I don't know who has permissions here, but this is where they have, you can see they're all feature request types. So I don't know if anybody's able to create these or anything like that. My recommendation is always, like, if there is a feature you are interested in, whether it's a brand new feature request or whether it's hey, there's already a feature request. I want this. I'm interested in this. Always work through your Red Hat account team and ask them to associate your account with that issue. I guess it's not a well hidden secret, but product managers prioritize based off of interest. So the more interest there is for things, then the more attention it's going to get, and therefore the more likely and the faster it will be, implemented and brought into the product. So,
gotcha. Yeah, that's pretty much what I had him do. I was like, all right, well, the best thing to do is reach out to your account team, have them submit it, and then that way they're your belly button, and then they can be the conduit between you and the support team or whoever's going to implement it. If it ever gets to that.
Yeah, and the account teams also have, so we have an internal thing called the field feedback forum that they can use to raise and escalate issues like that up into the BU and to engineering and stuff. So,
gotcha.
Yep, there's lots of tools available depending on what you're looking for.
Nice.
All right, was that the last of our top of mind stuff? Was there anything else you wanted to bring up?
I think that's it for top of mind. The OpenShift architect thing was what we talked about before. So last week.
Okay. Yeah. So do you want to talk about deployments and deployment configs first, or you want me to talk about some networking stuff?
I can run through the deployment config thing. I mean, it'll probably I can take as much or as little time as you want. So,
it's not up to me.
Well, how much time do you think you'll need for your networking stuff?
I don't know. As much as we can compress or we can expand depending. And of course, for anybody who's watching us, please ask questions as well. I don't think Jonny or I don't think we have a hard stop until like 1 p.m. Eastern for me. So yep. We can take as much time as we need in order to go over various things. And I'm hoping to break something today, Jonny. So
yes.
we're gonna learn together.
Yes, it's gonna be amazing. All right, cool. So I'll just start. And I'll run through this quick, just pretty quick. So with the release of 4.14, You mentioned it earlier, like in the intro, with the release of 4.14 and OpenShift deployment configs became deprecated. Now, the support for them is still there, or not, I don't want to say the support. You're still able to use them. Like they're still part of the OpenShift API. So like if you were to create a new deployment config, it'll create the replication controller and everything it's supposed to do. So with that, I just wanted to kind of backtrack, or we wanted to backtrack a little bit and just kind of talk about some of the similarities and why you would use one over the other. And I think the easiest way to explain it really is, and it comes right out of the docs too, is you'd use a deployment config for consistency, and then you'd use a deployment for availability, and that's just based on the way that the controllers are used to deploy the pods. So when you use a deployment config, you will you apply the deployment config, that creates a replication controller. That replication controller creates the pods, and it scales them up and down. And because it's more concerned about consistency, it uses a deploy pod. And so if you've ever created a deployment config, you'll see like a deploy pod comes up, and then it verifies that the deployment's settled, and then the pods are good to go, and then the deployment pod dies. Or if you've ever created a deployment, you see like it just starts scaling pods up, and it's like, all right, I'm going to do this. A cool thing, and I guess it's something I've always kind of confused, was like the replication controller and the replica set. Like they're synonymous to me, but they're actually quite different. Like what the replication set uses like equality based. I can't remember what it's called. Like it basically, like the labels are equality based selectors, right? And then it can also use like filters. So you can actually get very specific on what you're looking for on a deployment, or on a deployment config, it's equality only. And so just like little nuance things that make it work pretty well. But yeah, like if
deployment configs also have triggers for redeployment, right?
Oh yeah. So deployment configs, just if you can use triggers, you can use the customizable deployment strategies. So like rolling. I should have written this down. Yeah, but it's like rolling, whatever the other one is. I think there's like two other ones. You can also use lifecycle hooks, so that way if you have deployment stages, you can actually put those hooks in your deployment config and then like roll your different stages up.
That's where I use deployment configs most, is pointing it at an image stream, and then anytime the image stream gets updated, roll out the deployment again.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so you can do like on image change, on config change. I have the link to the docs there that I'll post, but yeah, the big things are, it's really just like the triggers, the lifecycle hooks, and the replication controller versus replica set. And the reason why we went, and we being the Red Hat, that we went with the replication controller is because it kind of predates the replica set. And so yeah, that's what we use to manage the deployment. I think over time we've seen where the deployments have become, like, Red Hat in general is using deployments over deployment configs they've been doing that for a while. I mean, pretty much I think since like OpenShift 4 really came out, like we really started that migration over to using deployments. If you look back at like other OpenShift objects like templates, they're still there. You can still use them, but we're really kind of moving away from the template resource into like either a Helm chart or a deployment. So the other part about the deployment configs is, because it's part of the OpenShift API, we could take advantage of things like the image streams. We could take advantage of creating routes and using the other OpenShift API objects. But I think as we're maturing as a product, I think we're now starting to see like, okay, maybe there's not really a need to have this, the overlap, because spec by spec they're pretty much the same with these like minor things with the triggers and hooks. And I was trying to grab the docs and talk at the same time, which I know better.
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you and answer Fayaz's question there about CoreOS layering. So quick recap. So CoreOS layering, and I'm going to share my screen real quick. Window, this guy, share. So if we go to the docs for 4.14 here, and we search for CoreOS layering. So image layering effectively gives us the ability to add packages to CoreOS. So if you don't know, CoreOS is RPM OS tree based. So effectively what that means is when we do an update to CoreOS, we put that into, Red Hat puts that into a container image, and then OpenShift via the machine config operator pulls that image down and then unpacks that new RPMOS tree layer on top of the existing one, and then it basically tells it to reboot and flip to the new image. So CoreOS image layering allows you to add things to those CoreOS or to those RPMOS tree layers. So the effect is, hey, I need to add a driver. I need to add a package for my monitoring suite. I need to do whatever. And you can see here in the examples, right? So starting with our OpenShift release, which you can extract, and the instructions for doing that are here in the docs. So you extract this specific release image that you want to use, and then you do an RPMOS tree install for whatever things that you need to do, or an RPMOS tree remove. Hopefully you wouldn't be removing things, but I don't know why you are shaking so much, dog, but you're noisy. I don't know if you can hear the dog's collar.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So anyways, this is super helpful for a number of different reasons in that, you can customize the operating system as needed. So a couple of places that I tend to look at when looking for more information and some background. The docs are wonderful for explaining functionality, like how something works or how to use something, but not always like why you care or how these things fit in. So this blog post in particular is a pretty good one. It's where we introduced CoreOS layering. So I'll post a link to that. And you can see it walks through what all of these things mean and, kind of explains all the different layers and what does that look like. And then we also have an example of doing this with kernel modules. So, hey, I need to add a kernel module for my network adapter, fiber channel adapter, whatever. So this is another good one. I'll go ahead and paste that link in there as well. And then, feel free to ask any questions that come to mind. One thing to note, so today with, or I believe it's tech preview today, maybe dev preview with 4.14, but at some point it will go GA, where effectively you add that manifest. So you add this manifest into your cluster, right? So you create a new, there'll be a CRD, you create a new instance that has this manifest, and then the cluster will automatically, when I go into a cluster update, it will automatically rebuild the CoreOS image and add in whatever you need and then push that out to your nodes. Today, the way to do that is you are wholly responsible for that image. So if I go in and I create a custom CoreOS image, I create a machine config that says deploy this, CoreOS image, and now I am responsible for updating that image and then updating the machine set, or the machine config, so that machine pool gets updated. But in the future, that will no longer be, or that will be optional. The cluster can optionally do it for you. Hopefully that helps. All right. You good, Jonny?
That's pretty much, yeah, I think that's the rundown. I mean, so Alan made a statement about it being very OpenShifty, and yeah, it is 100% OpenShift. It is the OpenShift API. And I think, just to kind of go back on what we were saying a minute ago, right? I think over time we'll start to see a lot of some of these OpenShift resources kind of going by way of the dodo bird, right? Like, deployment configs doesn't really make sense because we have deployments now, and there's so much overlap between deployments and the way that we deploy applications and stuff like that. Like it really makes sense to move on. Templating, going over to Helm charts or just deployment resources, GitOps, whatever. I think we'll start to see a lot of this. I think we'll always use routes. I think routes are so maybe we'll move to full ingress at some point, but we can use ingress, but routes give different capabilities. So I think we'll always be in bed with routes until something better comes along. And
the good news is you can use an ingress. It's just the cluster translates it to a route automatically. Yep. So if you want to, and I hear that semi-regularly from folks of, OpenShift is Red Hat proprietary. And usually our immediate retort is, no, it's not. Everything is open source, which is true. Everything at Red Hat, everything we do is open source. But what they really mean is there are CRDs in OpenShift that don't exist anywhere else. routes is usually the one that is most common. DeploymentConfigs was always one that was highlighted. But the reality is, with all of those things, just don't use them. Or in some cases, like an ingress, you can still use it. The cluster just handles it for you. So, yeah. Yes, Alan, that is correct. Open source, but very opinionated. And we do that for a number of different reasons, right? So like the installer, people will often ask, what is what is Red Hat's reference architecture for OpenShift? And the sort of tongue-in-cheek response that we tend to give is the output of an installer provisioned cluster. Right. If you deploy to IPI on vSphere, then that is our opinionated, right? Because it's done, the installer deploys it according to our opinion. That is our opinionated reference architecture for OpenShift. At least, day 0, day 1, deployment type of stuff. So yeah, it is very opinionated. And that has pros and cons, in many different ways. The good news is, if you don't like our opinions, it's not set in stone. With very few exceptions, and I'm struggling to come up with any off the top of my head, but I'm sure they're there. You can change pretty much everything and still be supported. So CoreOS is mandatory to a degree, only for the control plane.
SE Linux, right? I mean, that's
SE Linux is mandatory. I'm sure there's others, but anyways, sorry, I'm derailing you, Johnny.
Oh no. I mean, I was just wrapping up where. Yeah, I think that like once some of these solutions come out, right, that where there's a lot of overlap and it makes logical sense, right, to where we move on. I think we'll start seeing some of these deprecations. I did see something about image streams, but I'm not sure if I made that up or if I actually read it somewhere. Or if I had just seen a conversation about image streams eventually going the way of the dodo bird. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we're at a year from now, right, with some of this, especially with like pipelines and builda and stuff like that. So. That's it.
Does CoreOS layering make you unsupportable? No, it doesn't. So you can break things, right? So I'm sure you could go in and add a package or remove a package or overwrite a package and break things. What I suspect would happen is when you call support's going to say, "Don't do that." Right? Go in and remove your machine config for your custom CoreOS layer and allow it to re-roll out and all of that. And then, or, worst case scenario is probably create a new machine set and roll out without that machine config being present. And then they'll help you to identify what happened there. So it is supported. I believe the documentation does talk about some things that you would not want to modify to avoid those issues. Can it be applied to control plane nodes? I believe so, yes. I would have to, if the docs don't say that you can't, then I would say yes. Just be aware of how that affects updates, for right now. Can you push the image to the internal registry? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if that would actually create a cart before the horse, or chicken before the egg, depending on which one you think came first. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, you'd almost have to build, push it, and then redeploy, right? Like,
yeah. I don't know. Yes. So is there a way to roll back the CoreOS upgrade? So essentially, if you apply the upgrade and it fails for whatever reason, you can effectively flip the basically boot it back to the previous image, which is a standard RPM OS tree thing. So short term, I believe. So let's say that you did that, right? You updated you updated or created a custom image. You created a machine config. You started rolling it out to a machine config pool. My suspicion is you would get 1 or 2 nodes in, whatever your max unavailable is, and it would just fail. It wouldn't come back, right? So if you call support's probably going to tell you, I suspect, I don't know for sure, but they're going to say, connect into the node, roll back the, remove that machine config from the machine config pool. 2, connect into those affected nodes and then rpm-ostree tree revert and then reboot the node so that way they come back, and then you can continue from there. So note that is rolling back specifically CoreOS though. So remember, OpenShift upgrades as a whole are one way. So I have heard rumor that support can walk you through in very specific scenarios, depending on what it is, walk you through a pseudo revert of an OpenShift update, but I think it's only with Z streams. So you couldn't revert from like OpenShift 4.14 to OpenShift 4.13. But you could potentially, again, certain specific scenarios, conditions, etc., from like 4.14.9 to 4.14.7 or something like that. Bug with the multi-cluster plugin in OpenShift. Oh, that's interesting. From me, do you know if that if there's a bug open on that? If not, feel free to email either Jonny or I. Our email addresses are there on the screen. Or even if you don't want to look it up, you can send us the details and we'll check and see if there's anything existing.
That's it on questions.
Yeah. Appreciate the questions. Thank you. So deployments, Jonny.
Oh no, we're done.
Oh,
we wrapped it up.
Oh, okay. So, is there, and this is me off the top of my head, I don't know if you know the answer to this. So one, presumably, just like we do any other thing, when we deprecate APIs, remove APIs, there will be plenty of warning that happens inside of the console, as well as, you'll be able to do the OC get API resources, or now I'm forgetting the command, but you'll be able to tell if you have deployment configs in use inside of your cluster. If nothing else, you can do a OC get DC -A.
Yeah. And when you apply like a deployment config, you get a warning, right? So like if you, I'll have to post it in like the notes or something like that, just so we could, I wish I would have thought of that first. But yeah, basically just you apply a deployment config, it'll let you know, hey, this API object's been deprecated. It doesn't say, I don't know if it says which version, but I think it's like 3 full releases or something like that, where it'll stay. But templates have been basically dead in the wind for
ages,
forever, and it's still there. So I mean, like I feel like until
the usual policy is a feature is deprecated for 3 releases before it's removed, or a minimum of 3 releases. Has that always been the case? No, there's always exceptions, but the generic policy is 3 minor releases.
Yeah.
I made the mistake of petting the dog. Now she won't leave me alone. Yeah. So, the other thing I was going to ask is, do you know if we will have any sort of, for lack of a better term, translation tool? Like, hey, your deployment config looks like this today. Tomorrow, the deployment should look like this. And that might be a deployment plus, certain other YAML objects in order to replicate the functionality.
So like really, it's just the resource itself, right? Like you just convert it from a deployment config to a deployment. And if you're trying to do it, there was a comment about it earlier. Like if you're trying to do it live, it can be painful because, like you're trying to go from a deployment config that you've just been running in OpenShift to like a GKE or AKS cluster, and obviously it's not going to work. So you have to go in and you have to remove those, change the API server, and then change like those or remove those resources that aren't part of the deployment spec. But the replication controller and the replica set, like you should never even have to modify those, right? Like the deployment takes care of the replica set, the deployment config does the replication controller. So unless you're doing something very specific, like you would never even have to modify those things. It's literally just changing your deployment config spec to match the deployment spec and putting it in the right API group, and away you go.
Yeah. From me, is there a way to prevent automatic operator updates? Yes. You just change the policy on the subscription. Let me show you an example of that. That's the right one. So over here on so again, this is 4.14. So I'm going to pick on, I don't know, we'll pick on the ODF operator. So if I go to OpenShift Data Foundation, I go to subscription, so I can choose my update channel. So right now I'm on stable 4.14, and then I have this update approval. So right now it's set to automatic. So as soon as a new release pops into the channel, it'll update to it. If I change this to manual, then it'll ask me, and I'll have to go in and tell it to update. So that's all it is. Alan's calling you out there, Johnny.
With progressive syncs. Yeah, I'm reading this. I don't have a lot of experience with application sets. If you have like a specific thing that you're looking at, just go ahead and send it to me, and I'll get you in contact with the right person. But yeah, I've mainly just been dealing with the application resource itself, and then with progressive syncing. Are you talking about like sync waves and you're probably talking about like the dependency tree. I'm sorry, I'm actually like asking questions and then answering the question in the same thought. Yeah, Alan, if you want to shoot me
you're having a great conversation with yourself, Johnny.
It's so bad. It's so bad. Oh man. Yeah. So Alan, yeah, if you want to just shoot me a message with what you're looking for, and then we can work through it that way. I can put you in touch with Gerald or try and help you out if I can.
Yeah, I was going to say Gerald's who comes to mind for me.
Yep.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm thinking off to the side here as because I want to show an image, and I'm trying to think of the best way to show an image. So I'm not paying attention at the moment.
And so we have a question, and I'm so sorry if I butcher your name. It's from Chita about
Cynthia, I think.
Is it Cynthia? Oh, oh man, oops. Yeah, Cynthia, and it's how does a fresher prepare for OpenShift? Basically, how does somebody new get ready or learn OpenShift? And I think the one is learn.redhat.com, right? I mean, I think that's probably the best place to start. And I know you have a spiel that you go through if you want to.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, give me just 1 second to finish
you're good.
Pulling up these images. Of course not. Nope. Man, I'm struggling with how to operate a computer today. That's a bad thing in this profession.
Yeah. You should have a conversation with yourself live.
I know. Yeah. So generally speaking, so remember OpenShift is Kubernetes. So I tend to recommend folks start with Kubernetes and kind of Kubernetes basics, right? What's a container? What's a pod? All of that type of stuff. If you don't know where to start, I always recommend folks go to the DO080 course. So let me share my window again. Are you who I want? Yeah, you're who I want. So if I just do a quick search for DO080 in my browser here, it will come up with this very top link, Containers, Kubernetes, and Red Hat OpenShift Technical Overview. So this is a free course. Anybody can go and register for it, so long as you have I think you just need a regular Red Hat login. And it'll give you like an introduction to all of these concepts. After that, what I would suggest is going to learn.openshift.com. So learn.openshift.com will take you to just a whole bunch of resources here, including, and among other things, there's a bunch of live labs that you can just drop right into. So you can see OpenShift on AWS. There's a bunch of ebooks and stuff like that. So these labs are really interesting. So if I find, product, see more, if I look down here for OpenShift somewhere, so OpenShift Container Platform, you can see like here's an Apache Kafka with reactive messaging. So lots of stuff that's available there. And it just occurred to me, if you are also wanting to learn more of Kubernetes basics, there's Kube by Example.
Yep.
So kubebyexample.com. And this is actually run by some Red Hat folks. There's just a huge number of different learning paths in here. So you can see Kubernetes fundamentals, and it walks you through just all kinds of different stuff inside of here. Like we're just talking about deployments. Well, what's a deployment? Well, the DevNation folks have very helpfully, recorded a video that walks through exactly this, as well as a lot of times there's like a step through lab where it'll say, if you have a kind cluster or any Kubernetes cluster, here's some steps you can follow in order to learn more and stuff like that. So Kube by Example I've found to be a phenomenal resource for that type of stuff. I see chat going over here. I don't understand why the restream chat jumps around. So I have to look at the one over in Twitch in order to keep it from jumping around on me. Let's see. Getting community in 2023, studying a few chapters. It's great to hear. Run all operator pods on infra nodes and not run on random worker nodes. Remember in the case, yes. Yes. So, and who is that? That's Fayez. So if you look in the documentation, so I'm just going to go to the docs and I'm going to search for infrastructure nodes. So creating infrastructure nodes. And I believe if we go down here, I just selected the top one. Under additional resources, we have moving resources to infrastructure machine sets. So this particular docs page, and I'll paste it into the chat here. So this particular docs page goes through exactly that. So you can see here moving the router and moving the registry and monitoring, logging, etc. So effectively, each one of these will walk through and it tells you, here's the node selector, add in a node selector for the infra role, and then add in the tolerations for the taints associated with an infra node. So you can do this with any of the other workloads. So I want to say ODF, for example, has documentation on how to pin it or its various functions to infra nodes. ACM has the same thing and all of that. Just keep in mind that there are qualified or certain workloads that do and don't qualify, I should say, for infra nodes. So if we go to the subscription guide, come on, what happened here? So if we go to the subscription guide, and I will paste this link into chat as well. So the subscription guide walks through and tells you way down here at the bottom exactly what does and doesn't qualify for infrastructure. So you can see here infrastructure nodes, and it talks about all of the things that qualify. So a couple of notes here. So literally, my job this afternoon is to go through and update this sizing or subscription guide. It's not really a sizing guide. So we're adding, updating, changing some things in prep for 4.15. So we should see this updated hopefully within the next month or so, as well as simplifying some things in here. I would say if you have comments, questions about this particular doc, I know this one gets referenced quite a bit. Feel free to reach out to me. Hey, this doesn't make sense, or whatever that happens to be. Can you provide more clarity here? Happy to take all of that feedback into account. This is not a legal document. I should be very clear and upfront. The legal document is Appendix 1 and all those things. This is just meant to be a clarification of different things, right? Kind of like a frequently asked questions type of document. How do you get into OpenShift? Hopefully we answered that for you, Cynthia. And I apologize, Cynthia, if I'm butchering names. I am also absolutely terrible at names. Just ask my children. Don't know what role we play in the organization. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that it's helpful. I don't know, Zealand. Glad that it's useful. And as always, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, requests, etc. Start at the kernel and do it the hard way. What is it? Is it Arch Linux is the one where you start by building the kernel and going from there?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. DO 180 and DO 280, yes, also very good courses, but they are not free. But yeah, if you want to kind of progress down, and eventually we talked about the OpenShift architect thing before. So install Kepler. I'm actually not familiar with Kepler. I should probably get familiar with that. Is that the power one?
Yeah.
I think that's the power monitoring one. You and I were talking about that.
Yep.
Earlier this week, we want to bring that team on and talk about the power monitoring and how that can be used. Read documents, self-study, self-support. Yeah, I 100% feel you on that one. I was the same way for a long time. I learned how to do this stuff the hard way, and I don't know if it was good or bad, but it was something. Yeah. Yep. Thank you for posting the jobs link there, Jonny. So good thing to know, because a lot of people ask me, again, I am a manager. We don't post, like, there is no internal only job postings. All positions, all jobs, all recs, they go to jobs.redhat.com for everyone at the same time. So yeah, definitely take that into account. If you know a Red Hatter and you want to, ask them to submit you or refer you into a position, they can absolutely do that. One of the T-shirts I wear here is on the stream sometimes is the Red Hat Ambassadors shirt. You get one of those when you refer somebody. Where can you practice? So one of the things that you can do, and usually I talk about this, I didn't get this far this time. So you can go to try.openshift.com. So we talked about the DO080. We talked about learn.openshift.com. We talked about Kube by example. So when you're ready to get hands-on, you can go to try.openshift.com. And from here, it provides links over into a number of different things. So one, OpenShift entitlements are included in the developer account. So just like if you have a Red Hat developer account, you get access to, I don't remember how many RHEL entitlements it is these days. I want to say 16 maybe, but I know it changed. So that includes OpenShift as well. When you do that, however, it will show up as, where's my cluster? I had a cluster here somewhere. I don't know what happened to it. I got to find my cluster again. Anyways, when you do that, it will show up as a trial, and eventually that trial will expire. If you're using the developer entitlement, you don't have to worry about that. You can just continue to use it. It's self-supported. It is limited to development use cases. Sorry, I'm cleaning up tabs as I'm talking here. So it's limited to development use cases, which means single user, non-production use cases. So if you multi-user, if you're using it in production or anything like that, then you need an actual, entitlement for OpenShift in order to continue to do that. Sorry, I'm bringing back up my cluster here because apparently I commandeered the tab accidentally.
Right.
All right. No, I lost the thing here. So yeah, try.openshift.com. If you click on this, start your trial, it'll take you over to the Red Hat console. So if you go to console.redhat.com, so when you first land on console.redhat.com, what you'll want to do is scroll down. Oh man, they've changed this since the last time I was here. So you want to scroll down and see this Red Hat OpenShift. And I think you can click on here and it'll take you to this page. From here, you can go to like clusters and create cluster. If you want to deploy it inside of your environment, so you have hardware in your data center or a vSphere environment or whatever, you can go into the data center. Yes, thank you, helpful chatbot. And you can choose, for example, I want to deploy onto vSphere. And then it gives you all of the different install methods. So, you want to use the assisted installer is typically the easiest, most straightforward way to get started. But there are various other ways. So if you want to do a full installer provision infrastructure, so IPI install, you would click this automated. If you want to have full control over all of the different aspects, use the user provisioned UPI method down here. And all of this is in the documentation. So interactive is typically the one that which is assisted installer, is the one that I recommend to everyone first time. Particularly if you have a connected cluster, one that's going to be connected to the internet, because you literally you go through this process, you give it a name, you meet the prerequisites, it spits out an ISO, and you just boot the nodes to that ISO, and they
So awesome.
interface, and you click go, and yeah, it deploys everything. So blah blah blah. Highly available OpenShift deployment across 2 data centers. Would it be better to have 2 separate OpenShift deployments in each data center, or one cluster with nodes in both data centers? From me. So I will say that that is a very subjective answer or question, bordering on religious. So I know in the VMware world, right? VMware has always supported, effectively a two site high availability thing. And the reason why that works really well for VMware is because VMware has no dependency on vCenter for high availability, right? If one site or one set of nodes goes down, effectively the surviving nodes all talk with each other and collectively decide, yes, those nodes are gone by looking at things like data store heartbeats and all that other stuff. And then they negotiate amongst each other to say, okay, you're going to start this VM, I'm going to start that VM, and so on and so forth. Kubernetes, and therefore OpenShift, relies on the control plane. So the control plane has an odd number of nodes. With OpenShift, it's always going to be 3. What that means is with only 2 sites, you now have just a single, or you always have a single site that has the majority of nodes, right? One site will have 2 nodes, one site will have 1 node. And that means that if that site that has 2 nodes fails, effectively the control plane goes read-only and becomes inoperable, right? It will no longer begin scheduling or rescheduling, in this case, workload. So that means that spreading a cluster across 2 sites is not necessarily beneficial from a high availability, or just spreading it across 2 sites is not necessarily beneficial from a high availability perspective, right? So you would want to have automation, you want to have something in order to recover at least one of those control plane nodes at the surviving site as quickly as possible. So that way you would have 2 control plane nodes, it can reform quorum, and it can begin managing workload again. So typically what you'll hear, like me, my response has always been, you want to use 2 separate clusters. Focus on workload availability, not cluster availability, or workload recovery, not cluster recovery. So the downside of that, so I have cluster A and cluster B, or primary cluster, recovery cluster. So I use something like GitOps or ACM, and I deploy all of my workload in the primary cluster. Something happens at the primary site, I then use my same tool, GitOps or ACM, whatever I want to use, even Bash to, OC apply a bunch of manifests, and I redeploy everything at the surviving site. That will work absolutely fine. If you have persistence, it can get a little bit interesting. So the ODF folks, Portworx folks, Dell, IBM, Spectrum, like there's various storage vendors, storage partners have different solutions for how to not only protect, but also reintroduce PVCs on the surviving site. So just make sure you take that into account. And then last but not least, I would be remiss to not mention the global load balancer sort of active-active scenario. So Rafa was one of the first ones to really talk about that quite a bit. So effectively you have 2 sites, primary recovery, or primary secondary, or secondary, whatever. And your applications are effectively deployed across both sites all of the time. And then you have a global load balancer, and the global load balancer just directs traffic to one side or the other. And it could be like a 50-50, it could be 100% to one, and then it switches over to the other. But that typically requires some sort of application awareness and application. It has to understand when it's operating in that model. Yeah, did I miss anything there, Jonny?
No, I think you got it. You covered it actually pretty well. So
okay, yeah, there is. We're getting better at publishing that type of information and all of that other stuff. So there is this is not broadly applicable, but it is very applicable to OpenShift virtualization. So the OpenShift virtualization folks have published a disaster recovery guide with virtual machines. It's a great resource for anybody, just to give you awareness of kind of the different options that are available. So if I go to here and I just publish this link, and of course I need to go in and refresh my developer account. That's the problem here. I'm logged in with a Red Hat account, but I haven't refreshed my developer association, so it's not giving me access to anything. Anyways, this KCS article will walkthrough. It has all of the different options for virtual machines and how to use GitOps and how to use ACM and all that other stuff, and talks about workload recovery versus cluster recovery and all that other stuff. It's a really great resource. So I highly encourage everyone to read that. How much knowledge do you need to enter in OpenShift? I mean, if you're talking about like you want to be an administrator, and working for what we would consider a customer, it's going to be position dependent. From a Red Hat perspective, I always tell people, if you understand Kubernetes, that's great. If you don't, even if you don't understand OpenShift, because there's literally nobody better than Red Hat to teach you OpenShift. But at a minimum, you would want to have like basic, Linux knowledge, container knowledge, that type of stuff. And the more Kubernetes knowledge, the better. If you're coming in, brand new. Third cluster to load balance, switch to data center, our Hope 9. Yeah, you could do something like that, incorporate more intelligence into what's happening there. This is one of those, I used to do a talk years and years and years ago when DevOps first started becoming a thing of like, hey, as infrastructure admins, we spend a lot of time and energy and money creating infrastructure that has, 4, 5, 6 nines of availability. And every time you go up in a 9, it exponentially increases the cost of that infrastructure. The good news is the application doesn't have to know or care. It's highly available. It is mass. It is abstracted from as much infrastructure failure as possible. So the converse of that is on the application side. And you think cloud native applications, things that are in AWS or Azure, they expect the infrastructure to fail, right? I don't know if it's still this way, but for years, AWS's, uptime guarantee was like 3 nines. So the app teams just took that into account. Oh, at some point, when I reach, a certain scale, there is some percentage of my infrastructure that is always going to be down. Some percentage of my application is always going to be down, and they account for that at the application level. So what if we could work together, right? What if on-prem, what if in my data center, I could go to my app teams and say, hey, I'm going to give you 4 nines if you can, my infrastructure has weakness or it's hard for us to do this in these areas. Can you compensate for that at the application level? So that's one of those areas where, maybe due to reasons, it's too hard or too difficult to stretch an OpenShift cluster or to have redundant clusters, fully redundant clusters. So let's work at the application level and see what we can do there. Let's see. RHCD, data center, always rel. Yep. I should also mention, if you are wanting to learn OpenShift, like how to manage, use, deploy clusters on OpenShift, not manage, deploy clusters, applications, you can also use OpenShift local.
Yep.
So I don't remember where the link to OpenShift local is. I think it's from the docs.
Yep, notes doc.
So OpenShift local, well, if I could type. Anyways, OpenShift local, or what do we call it now? OpenShift, I can't even.
OpenShift local.
Marketing loves to change names on me, and they don't tell me always. Anyways, OpenShift local is it is a virtual machine running on your laptop or desktop that has a single node of OpenShift inside of it. But it is a reduced feature set compared to normal. So if you're wanting to learn how to administer OpenShift, deploy clusters, that type of stuff, it's not a great option. It's possible, but not great. But if you want to learn how to deploy applications, manage applications, build code, right, all that type of stuff, OpenShift local is a great solution. Yep. 4.15. So our Hope 9, 4.15 does not release next week, but the what's new stream is next week. So you'll hear more about 4.15 around the KubeCon timeframe, but the plan is to have it release in Q1 here, assuming nothing goes wrong. Let's see, 500 servers for one administrator to self-support. Yeah, that's the great thing about automation, right? It makes it easier. We should be able to scale to thousands. And AI will make it easier, right? That's the goal. We talked about AI a little bit, at the beginning of the year, right, Jonny? Now AI,
Yes.
hopefully AI, and you look at things like Ansible Lightspeed, right? Ansible Lightspeed makes it so that me as an individual can be more productive. Hopefully we'll see some things like that coming into other areas.
Yeah, it is so popular. Like it's hard to wrap my head around what's going to happen.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to digest your question here. Fayaz, I have RWNs in 2 geographical locations. I want to use a local registry based on location for these nodes instead of using OCR. I don't know what OCR, OpenShift Container Registry? Due to
I
network
think so,
latency,
maybe.
CoreOS worker node can be host to, yeah. So my Andrew works for Red Hat and will toe the company line. Answer to that is Quay or Key, depending on which English you want to use. So it does have geo replication and location awareness and all that other stuff. And it's an operator to deploy inside of OpenShift. So that one's relatively straightforward. Excuse me. Beyond that, if you want to use the default built-in registry, that one is going to be a little more complicated. Because it's not super configurable, and it's not, it's the standard upstream Docker registry. So it doesn't have a lot of those advanced features in that respect. You can deploy it into OpenShift. Clearly, it's deployed by default. You would not necessarily want to use a CoreOS worker node in order to do that. Oh, one thing you may want to do is the mirror registry.
Yep.
So the mirror registry, which is included with OpenShift, is essentially you run the command and it goes and it deploys on a rel node. It deploys just enough Quay in order to mirror all of the Red Hat OpenShift images. So you run the command, it deploys Quay, you run the OC mirror command, it pulls all of the images into it, and then you can use that for the purposes of deploying clusters. So if you store other container images in there, like your application container images, that type of stuff, you would want to have a full Quay/key, depending on your English. Yes, I'm going to say that every time. You would want to have an entitlement for Quay/key at that point. But for deploying clusters, the mirror registry is a great solution. I wish we had. So let's see. Any coupons for DO 180? I wish we had some. Actually, I'm going to talk to some marketing people. If you're at Summit, I would love to be able to do giveaways for something like that, but I don't know how we would do that. So, is Linux 1 also supported? Yes. So the S390 / mainframe, Linux, or what do we call them now? Z. I think it's IBM Z. It used to be IBM Z System, and then it was System Z, and now I think it's back to being Z. So it is supported. If we look on that, where did my tab go that had the so many tabs? Subscription guide. So if you look in the subscription guide has a very helpful, and apologies for all the fast scrolling here. It has a very helpful chart here that describes where you can install things and what they both install to as well as manage. So this chart is slightly out of date because it's from 8 months ago. This is one of the things that's going to get updated. I would definitely recommend checking the various documentation. And you can see here, here's all the compatibility matrices. So check the documentation for each of the products, but OpenShift itself does support IBM Z. How much costs for a Red Hat subscription? Honestly, I don't know. It's the perils of being an employee. We get attached to an employee subscription and it just has everything. So I honestly don't know how much things cost.
Yeah.
Corey, I'm doing some hosted control plane. Is there a good document that walks through the auth configuration for hosted control plane? So auth is configured at the hosted cluster, that CRD. So Jonny, do you have a link for the docs for that? Did you post a link for the docs to that anywhere?
I did not. I can. I was looking through it to see like how to manage the like if it's different to manage the OAuth on like your hosted clusters.
Yeah.
So I'll post the links.
Let's see here. So I'm going to go to the upstream docs. So this is the Hypershift docs because I think it's in here. And if we look at how-to guides, I want to say that there is one of these in here has it. Maybe. Manifest, maybe? No. Anyways, it's somewhere in here, and I don't remember where. Probably if I looked in here long enough. It's authentication is controlled at the hosting cluster level. So when you deploy the hosted control plane instance, it's one of the stanzas inside of there. I used to have a do I still have? I think I used to have a gist that included it at one point. I don't know if that's still out there or not.
Oh wait.
No, it doesn't look like I have it, but I did at one point have it configured.
I found it. I just sent you the link. And it's on the hosted cluster resource.
Yep. So how to cluster configuration. How to, and then where'd you click to get to that?
I should just search for it. I search for OAuth.
Yeah, there you go. Configure OCP components. Oh, that's so obvious. Anyways, so here you can see underneath the configuration, spec.configuration is the OAuth stanza. And this you can see looks exactly like the OAuth stanza that you would find inside of OpenShift. So if I come down here to my configuration for OAuth, it looks exactly like one of these. Identity
and what we can do
switcher.
Next stream, I'll try and have like a little demo of that set up where we go in and we set that up. Maybe using like HTTPass or something like that. So I'll work on that.
Yeah, thanks for posting the link.
Yep.
Deployment configs are deprecated. Yes, they are. So Chinta, fresher jobs, just check out jobs.redhat.com. That's where we post everything. Security training courses available. Fayaz. That is a good point. I'm sure that we have things. I just don't know where they would be found at. Because I thought that there was a course on that. There's Jonny. Do you have the link for like? No, that is the internal one. I know we have some like ebooks and stuff like that talk about it.
Oh, I'd have to find them. I can find them and put them up in the show notes or the YouTube description, video description.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to. So, Faz, if you will ping Jonny and/or I via email, our email addresses are there on screen. Sully at Red Hat or Jonny at Red Hat. We'll dig up those resources and send it over to you. So I know some parts are covered, I think, in DO 280 or 380. You can look at the syllabus for each of the courses, and that should give you some insight. But we can dig it up. We can ask the learning team. Partner account with some available subscription licenses. Will I be able to deploy an environment on Red Hat's cloud? And that comes from DD Lingo. I don't think so. So what I mean by that is we don't provide like an AWS or an Azure environment for you to deploy those, like deploy a cluster using your entitlements into as a partner. I have been told that at some point in the not too distant future, I'm hoping in the first half of 2024 here, demo.redhat.com will be available to partners. So at that point, you would be able to go in and click the button that says, please give me an OpenShift 4.14 cluster. And it uses, it doesn't use your entitlements. It uses whatever entitlements. And those are great for doing short-term learning. Typically, they last for like 8 to 12 to maybe 24 hours. and demos and stuff like that when you're talking with customers. But yeah, so far as I know, we don't have any resources for deploying clusters, even for partners. Even as an employee, I work for the BU, right? I don't have access to an AWS account to be able to go in and deploy things. I use demo.redhat.com too, as does my entire team. So there's a lot of people. There's a thriving home lab community here inside of Red Hat. We're hoping to have some of those people on in the not too distant future to talk about what they do with their labs and stuff like that, which will hopefully help some people out. Yeah, OpenShift Container Registry. Thank you. Well, it's not pronounced Florida. Yeah, our Hope 9. Yeah, it. I got nothing on the. It is an intense debate depending on which English you subscribe to, and there's other things. What was the? There's another thing, another one that came up recently in one of the company meetings of different ways to pronounce words depending on which English. Is there anything Quay can do that Nexus can't? I honestly don't know the answer to that, Gabby. I don't know enough about either Quay or Nexus to authoritatively answer that. You can reach out to us and we can share some information there. What little we know, I would also suggest reaching out to your Red Hat account team. They should have access to basically feature comparison, feature information on that as well. And they'll be able to share more with you than we can. I think we've caught up here.
Yeah, all the way.
All right. Yeah. So please keep questions, keep chat coming in. Happy to address those as we can as they come up. That's what we're here for. So yeah, it's a French word. Let's see. So I wanted to talk about some network related things. So where all of this came from is I was having a conversation with some folks, internal folks around OpenShift virtualization and how to connect virtual machines to the outside world, specifically different VLAN interfaces. So if you're familiar with sort of Red Hat and how we have historically done VLAN-based connectivity inside of, or for virtual machines, like at RHEL and stuff like that, for years and years and years, the method was effectively what we see here in the bottom half of this graphic, right? So I have a network adapter. I'm going to call it ETH1 here. I go in and I create a VLAN interface on that, on top of that adapter. So ETH1.123 to represent VLAN 123. And then on top of that VLAN interface, I create a bridge, and then I attach my virtual machines to that bridge to give them access to that particular VLAN. So inside of OpenShift and with OpenShift virtualization, this is what that bigger picture looks like, right? So I have an upstream network switch, and then my physical host, in this case, has two network adapters. One is the quote unquote primary adapter. This is the one that has a IP address on the machine network. It's where the SDN lives and all that other stuff. So, and that I can use for connecting virtual machines to the SDN. When I want to connect them to the outside world, I use a secondary network adapter. So, in this case, ETH1, but could be whatever, could be a bond, etc. And that one, in this case, has a trunk of VLANs going to it. And from there, I would create my ETH1.VLAN interfaces, my bridges. And then inside of OpenShift, I would use Multis network attachment definitions to define each one of these VLAN or a connection to each one of these bridges, I should say. So relatively straightforward in that respect. We've got a bunch of different examples of that in the docs. So if I go to docs here, and I go to virtualization and networking and Linux bridge. So we can see here's a node network configuration policy. Here it's just connecting to, I've got a bridge. So create a Linux bridge on top of interface ETH1. If I wanted to create a VLAN network on there, is it shown in here? I don't think it's shown in here. If I wanted to create a VLAN interface in there, I would just have the same thing. I would have another interface stanza and I would name it, ETH1 dot whatever, and then I would define a VLAN port on top of that. So that's good. It functions well enough. It serves its purpose. The problem with that, at least in Andrew's opinion, is it results in a proliferation of NNCPs, right? I now either have to have one NNCP for every one of my VLANs and the bridge that's associated with it, or one gigantic massive NNCP that applies all of these things at the same time. So it's kind of messy. So the modern way of doing that is to use VLAN filtering. So this was initially published and talked about, you see, back in 2017 with RHEL 8. So let's take this and we'll paste that in there. So the difference here is that, and you can see here's another graphic, kind of like what I just showed. The difference here is that we are now using just a single bridge, and we assign the VLAN tag at the point where that, I'm going to call it a port on the bridge, on the quote unquote switch, is connected. So this makes it, in my opinion, much more scalable for a number of different reasons. One, we don't have to worry about all of that extra config, right? It's one NNCP that defines the bridge. And then for each VLAN we want to connect our virtual machines to, we use a network attachment definition with the VLAN tag associated with it. So here's the graphic we were just looking at, the one that I was just showing our interface, VLAN interface, bridge on the VLAN interface. So what that looks like now is I have my interface with my bridge interface, and then I have a network attachment definition for each one of my VLANs. And then I just attach my VMs here. So in this instance, my VLAN, so for example, VLAN 123 down here, when I connect this VM's network adapter to that bridge underneath, at that point is where the VLAN tag is assigned. So what are some pros cons here aside from just doing configuration? So one, if I do this, so these two VMs are, let's say that they're even on the same host and they're connected to the same VLAN. It means that if these two VMs are talking to each other, the network traffic comes out of this VM, it gets attached to the bridge, it gets VLAN tagged at that point. Within the bridge, it then goes over to the other VM's interface and gets untagged, and then the two of them communicate. So you're always having to go through this tag, untag process, even for traffic that is traversing the same bridge on the same node that's happening there. Shouldn't be a big deal, right? Should be very, very low overhead there, but it is marginally more than if you were doing something like this, where they're going to be on the same bridge. So in this case, they would both be on the same bridge. The VLAN tag does not get assigned until the traffic leaves that bridge here. So just something to be aware of there. It does also have some effect on various other, I'll say, security things. Effectively, somebody pointed out to me that it was possible to effectively overload the VLAN tag and cause it to hop VLANs, which I think was theoretically possible using the other way. Now I lost tabs. But that is no longer possible here because the switch, the OVS, is what's enforcing those VLAN tags. And it does do that actively with filtering. So let's see. Sorry, I lost chat again while I was running my mouth.
Yeah, you're good.
Yep.
There was one from PF Ruth about, I guess, a blog that we shared, like the closing article says that there's going to be, creating a nested cluster. I guess Arvin put that up. Do you know if there's a follow-on?
Which article is that?
I'm not really sure, to be honest. I'll have to go back and look. Or actually, PF Ruth, if you can share the link that you're looking at, that might be a little bit easier than me trying to dig back through. And then rhope9 asked if it's just straight up 802.1q for the VLANing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, nothing fancy happening there. Okay. So what does this look like in code? So I have shamelessly, first I will point out that these graphics are not mine. I shamelessly stole them from Dale Bewley inside of Red Hat. So he has these rather nice graphics that I have yet again lost another one of my tabs. Anyways, he has some nice graphics that they were a little bit hard to read. So I ended up, here, I'll show you what they look like. So even expanding these, you can see that the text out here is just hard to read. It's a little small and the colors make it difficult. So I literally translated this into things that are easier for blind people like me to see. But yeah, so all of this is shamelessly stolen from Dale and the great work that he's done. So when we look at a node network configuration policy, you can see it's going to be effectively the same as what we saw a moment ago in the documentation. So here he's just using ENS224 instead of ETH1. We create a bridge that uses that port, and it's named BR VM data in this instance. And then from there, we create a network attachment definition. And this network attachment definition is now pointed at, we see BR VM data here, and we have a VLAN tag here. So as our virtual machines, or any pod really, it doesn't have to be a virtual machine, are connected, their traffic gets tagged. So let's take a look at what that looks like inside of an OpenShift cluster. So first, I want to go to networking and go to, did something break in my cluster? Yep, see? Dynamic plugins are broken again. I must have, that's frustrating. See, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Just bugs making life difficult. Disable cache while DevTools is open. Okay.
Come on, little buddy. Trying to do a demo.
I know. Well, anyways, I guess I can't show it because, it's difficult. In theory, so if my plugins were working, so this NMState console plugin would allow us to see this underneath this networking category here, but instead I'll do it the hard way. Go to custom resource definitions, and we want in NCP. Okay, node network config. So we have this node network configuration policy, and I have an instance here for BR flat. So within my cluster here, you can see all we have is a BR flat that is connected to ENP3S0. So what does that look like from a node perspective? So if I come back to custom resource definitions and I look at node network state. So my node network state is, so if you're not familiar with NMState, so node network state is the definition, or it shows you the current configuration, the status of the node's underlying network configuration. The NNCP, the node network configuration policy, is what we use to tell NMState, please configure the node to look like this. And it is additive. So if you don't define something to be modified in there, it doesn't mess with it. So if I look at my worker one configuration state, we can see here. So here's our interfaces definition. So we can see that this is a bridge. This is, where are you going to tell me the name at here? So here's our BR flat, and you can see that our port assigned on here is ENP3S0. So you note that there is no VLAN associated with this. It says trunk. It has all of the different ranges associated with it. We don't have to do anything there. So the last thing that we need is a network attachment definition to create those things, or to create the VLAN association rather. So from here, I can go in, and first I want to choose a project to create this one. I'm going to use default. So I want to create a network attachment definition. I'm going to call it VLAN 1. So I want to select CNV Linux bridge. So our bridge name is BR flat. BR flat. And I'm going to give it a VLAN tag of, we'll give it 123. VLAN tag of 123. So that's all we got to do. At this point, when I go and if my virtualization plugin was working, then I would be able to show you that you can select for the network adapter on our VM. We can select this VLAN 123 network attachment, and it will then get attached and be able to do those things. So this is sort of the default expected, the normal way that we do networking for virtual machines inside of the host, or inside of OpenShift virtualization, rather. So earlier this morning, as I was going through and digging into some things that have changed and things that have, shall we say, gotten better, I learned some new things about OVS and OVN. In particular, there is now a feature in OpenShift 4.14 called OVN secondary networks. So OVN secondary networks allow us to do kind of exactly what it sounds like. So we utilize OVN Kubernetes to create basically another network that's running off of the same set of OVS, Open vSwitches, underneath in the cluster. And when we do this, we have two different options available to us. So one is layer 2 of topology, and the other one is local net topology. So let's talk about layer 2 first. So the layer 2 topology, I'm going to click the docs link over here. So the layer 2 topology here creates what is effectively a private layer 2 network. Okay, so just like if I were to have a VLAN at the external network that had no gateway associated with it, I just had a VLAN, I can have all of those pods, whether they're virtual machines or a regular pod, on that secondary L2 network, and they can communicate with each other on a flat network, even if it's traversing to other nodes in the cluster and all of that other stuff. So great for doing, if we think virtual machines and the traditional 3-tier network, where I have my application logic and it talks to my database tier, and I want to have a private network that those things communicate on. It's effectively replicating that. So interesting, right? Useful. You can envision a couple of different use cases for how you can take advantage of that. If you need layer 2 adjacency for your workload for whatever reason. Am I missing anything in chat, Jonny, by the way?
No, I was muted so that you couldn't hear my dog.
Okay.
Network bark definition. Yes, Jamie, thank you. I was trying to catch it fast enough, but obviously not.
Let's see. rhope9 is LLDP supported in OpenShift virtualization. Yes. I was actually talking with the lead for the networking stuff for NMState and all that, and I did not know this. I learned something. This was 6 weeks ago. It was before the holiday. Of really, you can use LLDP to automatically configure network adapters in RHEL now. I don't know if you knew this, Jonny.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So apparently, supposedly, that also works in OpenShift. I haven't tested it because I don't have that kind of infrastructure, but supposedly it works. rhope9, if you'll ping me an email, I will. I'll dig up that and see if I can find an example of what it should look like. I may be misremembering. It may be one of those like, we haven't tested it, but in theory it works type of things, or maybe it's scheduled to be supported in the future. But I think it will. If it doesn't work already, it's on the cusp of working, I think. Okay, so L2 network, interesting, useful for the layer 2 topology is useful and interesting for a number of different reasons, but it's not necessarily not in all instances, not in all cases. So, for example, we don't have any sort of gateway available as a part of OpenShift by default for those layer 2 networks. So, reaching the outside world would be something that like you deploy a pod or you deploy a VM that's connected to the outside world and connected to this L2 network, and it acts as the router in between them. Without asking the product management team, I don't know whether or not that's on the roadmap. So in my opinion, the one that's more interesting is the local net topology. And I say that because for me, selfishly, in my labs, I don't have a whole lot of network adapters. So the local net allows us to use the same OVS that is in use by OVN network that is in use by the cluster and the SDN for sort of our own purposes. So a little bit of background here. So historically, and even in the graphics that I have here, right, we're creating all of these interfaces on a secondary network adapter, right? ETH0 in my diagram here has the SDN. The SDN has its OVS and OVN Kubernetes that runs on top of it. And we can't really mess with that. With OpenShift SDN, we could go in and we could, create a bridge with ETH0, and it would just pick up and it would run off of that, and it didn't really care, right? I could add additional VLAN interfaces on top of ETH0, and OpenShift SDN didn't care. OVN Kubernetes, on the other hand, very much does care and does not like it when you mess with its underlying network adapter. So with this local network or local net topology, I can now effectively create additional networks on that underlying set of OVSs. So for example, what I can do is, in this instance, and I think we have an example inside of here. I think that's why I had this up. Yeah, so effectively, where is my thing? Did I copy it out? Here we go. So let's take this and I'm just going to use the YAML editor in here for convenience. So now I can create a node network configuration policy in an NCP. So I'm going to create a bridge mapping, so an OVN bridge mapping called localnet, or a type of localnet, and give it a name, localnet1, and it's on top of BREX. So BREX is the one that's created by OpenShift or OVN Kubernetes, and it's what it uses. So I have effectively defined a new network on my underlying OVN Kubernetes managed OVS set of resources. So with that being created, I can now take a new network attachment definition. I'm just going to post it down here, and just to make it proper, we'll put the YAML separator in there. So now I can create a new network attachment definition, which remember is what Multis uses to connect pods to CNIs. And this time I am creating one that connects to our local net 1. So remember, that's our bridge mapping that we created up here, using the local net topology. And I can define a VLAN ID here. If I do that, it will begin attaching VLAN IDs to the traffic, to anything that is connected to this network attachment definition. Or if I leave off my VLAN ID, it uses the native VLAN for that underlying interface. So from a graphic perspective, and if I had time, it means that kind of this whole set of things can optionally go away. And now they basically all connect directly into its mast here, but this is actually an OVS. Or a set of OVSs on each one of the nodes. It all connects into this underlying thing. So lots of options, lots of different things that you can take advantage of there. So which one of these is sort of the best for different scenarios and different options, right? So Andrew's terse summary is, what happened to my, where'd you go? Uh-oh, I lost my thread. So Andrew's terse summary of why you would want to use each one of these. So the bridge CNI, which remember is what we're looking at here, BR ETH1, is not really useful if I only have one network adapter. So let's say my physical servers have, 25 gig or 100 gig Ethernet, and I don't want to have, because I want to have redundancy. So I don't want to have 400 gig Ethernet adapters to create a bond for one and a bond for the other. Instead, I only want to have one bond of 200 gig adapters, and I want all of my traffic to ride those two interfaces. The bridge CNI is not good for that, as we can see here. The secondary network with the local net is useful for that, right? So I can take advantage of it in order to host all of that network traffic on the same set of interfaces. So I can access that underlying network or VLAN, so the native VLAN, if you will. I can attach additional VLANs to both of these in that case. But probably one of the biggest advantages is network policies still apply when I'm using this local net. So with using the bridge interface, I can't apply network policy to those. So if I'm connecting, if I create a bridge let me bring up the graphic. So if I create a bridge over here and I'm using this to attach my VLAN interfaces and doing all of that, network policy objects don't apply to this. But when I use the local net and attach it to the underlying OVS, I can still use network policies and I can still control the traffic that is, going out from there. So
why is that? Do you know why that is? Is it because like the bridge is more like a traditional network and it basically puts a box around it because of that? And then like once you
I
start
don't know
configuring,
exactly why we can't control network policy on others. Effectively, this is on this bridge, other than it's a Linux bridge and not an OVS.
Okay.
Whereas this is an OVS and it's already under management, and therefore I don't know the details there.
Okay.
But yeah. So, anyways, I think this is really cool stuff. It's something that I'm looking forward to learning more with and doing some experimentation with. Hint, hint. There is going to be a lab at Red Hat Summit that I'm hoping to incorporate some of this stuff into. So, yeah, I don't know. I found that I learned a lot of this stuff this morning, and it was really cool to me. So, thank you to Petter and Wagner and the other folks here inside of Red Hat that were. I think we all got a little bit excited this morning. So thank you. Let's see. Just digging back through chat. I don't see anything here.
Yeah, I think we're caught up. Like I missed our Hope 9's question earlier, but you got it. But yeah, I mean, I think we're squared away.
So let's see. The bog PF Ruth or PF Ruth is talking about is nested OpenShift using OpenShift virtualization. Do I have that one up anywhere?
I don't know. It's Arvin wrote it, and so I reached out to him, but everybody's at RH1 right now, and so I hit him up and I was like,
yeah. So there are two methods for deploying OpenShift on OpenShift. So the one that he uses in this particular blog post is it is a bare metal non-integrated OpenShift deployment. So what that means is he goes in and he deploys virtual machines just like you would deploy any other virtual machine, and you boot it to the CoreOS ISO and you install or the assisted installer ISO or the agent-based installer ISO, whatever, and it stands up an OpenShift cluster just as though it were running, more or less, think on like RHEL KVM, right? There's no integration with the underlying platform. So the decision was made several years ago that we would not create an IPI installer for OpenShift on OpenShift. Instead, the decision was hosted control planes. So if you want an integrated cluster, an integrated OpenShift on OpenShift cluster, you would do that using hosted control planes. And from there, it'll have machine integration. I say machine, it's a cluster API integration for doing things like automatic scaling with node pools and all of the other great stuff that's there. So, and there is, I know that they have a white paper that I think they're going to be publishing. And then if it's not already available, I'd have to ask. I remember doing a review on it not too long ago. But they're going to be publishing some sort of document that talks about this architecture and how exactly they did it, of distributing more or less striping clusters across clusters in order to provide maximum availability to this particular customer. Hopefully that at least gets you pointed in the right direction on how to do that there.
He was actually when the last paragraph says like there's basically, hey, the next series or the next blog explains this, and so that's where I reached out to Arvin to ask him like, when's the next one going to drop?
And here, there's a
it was on the 2nd, so I imagine there's probably like a week or two probably release.
Yeah, I don't know. So you notice that we recently, so it used to be cloud.redhat.com/blog. So they're in the process of transitioning everything over to the main Red Hat blog. So that may be causing things.
Interesting.
So yeah, it in theory everything transitioned seamlessly, but
realistically,
I don't know. I just haven't I haven't actually dug in. I haven't actually traced through links or anything like that to find out. But yeah, or hope not. It happened a while ago. We have a whole new publishing process as well, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think they tell us now it takes us 2 weeks to publish something here on the blog. So more reviews, which is again not a bad thing. It keeps people like me who are terrible writers from putting my foot in my mouth regularly.
At least that's the hope, right?
Yeah, that's the hope. Let's see. Let me look at my notes real quick. Did I miss anything? I don't think so. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, I can't thank. This wasn't Andrew coming up with all these things. This was definitely a group effort, a whole team of people in the background that were helping me see how all this stuff works and how it works together and what the importance is. And definitely can't thank Dale enough for creating these awesome diagrams that I shamelessly plagiarized, for over here. So any questions, for anybody who's not watching us live, again, don't hesitate to reach out via email, Sully, Sully at redhat.com, or Jonny, Jonny at redhat.com. Happy to answer any questions about that. You can also reach out to us through all of the normal, social platforms. I don't know. Does Slack count as a social platform? I don't know.
It's like LinkedIn. Is LinkedIn? I think it kind of is.
Technically,
It is
yes.
now.
It seems like LinkedIn is the main way that people get information these days. Again, for better or for worse, Twitter has sort of gone downhill. Like my engagement, both personally, the amount of time that I spend on Twitter, as well as the amount of time that I see other people engaging with things on Twitter, seems to have gone anecdotally way, way down. So yeah, and again, apologies for butchering any names. PF Ruth, P Ruth. If you have any questions or if anything's confusing, just let us know. Happy to work on these messages and how to describe things and all that. I admit that this last little bit of putting together with the local net, I was learning about it this morning, or learning some of the nuances and details this morning. So I haven't had time to refine my message and get it more understandable, as I struggle to say words like more understandable. All right. Anything else, Jonny?
Oh man, I'm good.
Yeah. So again, if you have any last minute questions here while we're kind of wrapping up and closing up, please go ahead and submit those into the chat. We'll do our best to address those here before we go. And as always, reach out to us offline if there's anything you would like to know about. Or Hope 9, last time I shared OpenShift news on LinkedIn, it took 2 weeks before. Yeah. Was that on the OpenShift user group thing?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. So that's managed by a couple of folks on our marketing team. And I know that they have been super busy as a result of all of the Red Hat 1 stuff going on. So apologies if it takes time to get stuff posted over there. You can always, ping Jonny or I, and we'll ping over to the marketing folks and see if we can figure out what's going on. But yeah, I know they explained it to me one time of it was created, how it was created means that they have less input or less control over how things happen, and the control that they have is not normal or something like that. I don't know. So it's functional. Yeah, Peter, Red Hat Summit is right around the corner. There's a bunch of stuff happening between now and then. So we've got KubeCon coming up. There's an IBM conference or two coming up. Lots of stuff happening all between now and June.
GitOpsCon, everything.
GitOps, we don't care about GitOps around here.
I know. That was high five to Christian. Enjoy.
Yeah. So, speaking of GitOps, you saw that Weaveworks is shutting down. So yeah, lots of good people over there. I feel bad for them, but I know they've made huge contributions into Argo, which is definitely thankful for that. Argo has turned into sort of the de facto tool for how we do declarative configuration in Kubernetes. So
Yeah, I mean, the guy that started Weaveworks actually defined GitOps, right? Like he's the one that coined it. So I mean, like you're talking about like heritage.
There, we should live stream Ask an OpenShift admin from Summit. You know, I've considered doing that. I don't know if I brought that up with you, Johnny. I think we might have talked about it a while ago. It wouldn't be a bad idea. You know, I did a stream. Remember, where was I? I was at VMworld, I think, or VMware Explorer. So you know, it might not be a bad idea to do something like that. We can do like recaps and stuff like that. You know, I've considered it before. So I'm working with the team of folks who are responsible for our for the OpenShift. It's not OpenShift. It's hybrid platforms or hybrid cloud booth at Summit. So maybe we can steal some space from them and, you know, do a stream or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So yeah, I think the corporate marketing folks are also doing some stuff. Hosted on the main stage. Well, nobody else would be in the room while we're on the stage, but actually, I have not seen anything about the demos for Red Hat Summit yet. Hopefully I'll be hearing some more about what we're going to be talking about there. So, anyways, thank you everybody. We really appreciate you joining today. As far as I know, we'll be back next week. You know, it's celebrating Valentine's Day, so I expect roses and chocolates from you, Johnny.
As you should.
You know. I'd say I'll make you breakfast, but it's going to be way too late in the day for breakfast. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you everybody for joining us. We will see you next week. I don't know what the topic is next week. I know we've got a couple of potential guests up in the air, so we won't commit to anything yet. Maybe we can do another one of these technical shows because it feels good to stretch those legs. But yeah. Hats are red, boxes are blue. I didn't know you were a poet, R-Hope9. I still remember I was in elementary school, maybe third grade, and we were asked to create a Valentine's Day poem to share with the class. And one of the other boys in the class wrote a poem that was, you know, roses are red, violets are blue. If I had a brick, I'd throw it at you.
Oh,
you know, clearly we're, you know, it's 30 something years later and I still remember this. And kids are great. Kids are wonderful. All right, Johnny. Thank you to the audience. Thank you, Johnny. Appreciate your help today. Appreciate keeping me on track and keeping up with the chat while I've been running my mouth. And I will see everyone next week. Johnny, I'll toss it to you for last words while I get ready to click buttons.
Yeah, thanks. Obviously, like the interaction is amazing. Like we get to derail for a little bit and talk about a little bit of everything. So thank you for that. So yeah, when we come back next week, bring your questions. It doesn't matter what they're, well, I mean, it matters, but like for the most part, it doesn't matter what they're about. We'll try and answer them and at least go down some rabbit holes with you. If you have anything that you want us to talk about, shoot us an email or hit us up on Slack.
Yeah, absolutely. See y'all next week.